This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. On Something by Hilaire Belloc. Chapter 26. The Portrait of a Child. In a garden which must, I think, lie somewhat apart and enclosed in one of the valleys of central England, you came across the English grass in summer, beneath the shade of a tree. You were running, but your arms were stretched before you in a sort of dance and balance, as though you rather belonged to the air and to the growing things about you and above you than to the earth over which you passed, and you were not 3 years old. As in jest, this charming vision was recorded by a camera which some guest had with him. A happy accident, designed for all we know by whatever powers arrange such things, an accident of the instrument or of the plate upon which your small, happy, advancing figure was recorded. So chanced that your figure, when the picture was printed, shone all round with light. I cannot, as I look at it now before me, and as I write these words, express, however much I may seek for expression, how great a meaning underlies that accident, nor how full of fate and of reason and of suggested truth that aureole grows as I gaze. Your innocence is beatified by it, and takes on with majesty the glory which lies behind all innocence, but which our eyes can never see. Your happiness seems in that mist of light to be removed and permanent. The common world in which you are moving passes, through this trick of the lens, into a stronger world, more apt for such sight, and one in which I am half persuaded, as I still look upon the picture, blessedness is not a rare adventure, but something native and secure. Little child, the trick which the camera has played means more and more as I still watch your picture, for there is present in that light not only blessedness, but holiness as well. The lightness of your movement and of your poise, as though you were blown like a blossom along the tops of the grass, is shown through, and your face, especially its ready and wondering laughter, is inspired, as though the light had filled it from within, so that looking thus I look not on, but through. I say that in this portrait which I treasure there is not only blessedness but holiness as well, holiness which is the cause of blessedness, and which contains it, and by which, secretly, all this world is sustained. Now there is a third thing in your portrait, little child. That accident of light, light all about you and shining through your face, is not only blessed, nor not only holy, but is also sacred. And with that thought there returns to me, as I look at what always should return to man, if he is to find any stuff for profit in his consideration of divine things. In blessedness there is joy, for which here we are not made, so that we catch it only in glimpses or in adumbrations. And in holiness, when we perceive it, we perceive something far off. It is that from which we came and to which we should return. Yet holiness is not a human thing, but things sacred, things devoted to a purpose, things about which there lies an awful necessity of sacrifice, things devoted and necessarily suffering some doom. These are certainly of this world. That indeed all men know well at last, and find it part of the business through which they needs must pass. Human memories, since they are only memories, human attachments, since they are offered up and end, great human fears, and hopeless human longings. These are sacred things attached to a victim and to a sacrifice, and in this picture of yours, with the light so glorifying you all around, no one can doubt who sees it, but that the sacredness of human life will be yours also. That is, you must learn how it is offered up to some end, and what a sacrifice is there. I could wish, as I consider this, that the camera had played no such trick, and had not revealed in that haze of awful meaning all that lies beyond the nature of you, child. But it is a truth which is so revealed, and we may not, upon a penalty more terrible than death, neglect any ultimate truth concerning our mortal way. Your feet, which now do not seem to press upon the lawn across which they run, have to go more miles than you can dream of, through more places than you could bear to hear, and they must be directed to a goal which will not in your very young delight be mentioned before you, or of which, if it is mentioned, you will not understand by name. And your little hands, which you bear before you with the little gesture of flying things, will grasp most tightly that which can least remain, and will attempt to fashion what can never be completed, and will caress that which will not respond to the caress. Your eyes, which are now so principally filled with innocence that the bright quality drowns all the rest, will look upon so much of deadly suffering and of misuse in men that they will very early change themselves in kind, and all your face, which now vaguely remembers nothing but the early vision from which childhood proceeds, will grow drawn and self-guarded, and will suffer some agonies, a few despairs, innumerable fatigues, until it has become the face of a woman grown. Nor will this sacred doom about you, which is that of all mankind, cease or grow less or be mitigated in any way. It will increase as surely and as steadily as increase the number of years, until at last you will lay down the daylight and the knowledge of daylit things as gladly as you now wake from sleep to see them. For you are sacred, and all those elders about you, whose solemn demeanour now and then startles you into a pretty perplexity, which soon calls back their smiles, have hearts only quite different from your quite careless heart, because they have known the things to which in the manner of victims they are consecrated. All that by which we painfully may earn rectitude and a proper balance in the conduct of our short affairs, I must believe that you will practice, and I must believe as I look here into your face, seeing your confident advance as though you were flying out from your babyhood into the young life without any fear, that the virtues which now surround you in a crowd and make a sort of court for you and are your angels every way, will go along with you and will stand by you to the end. Even so, and the more so, you will find, if you read this some years hence, how truly it is written. By contrast with your demeanour, with your immortal hopes, and with your pious efforts, the world about you will seem darker and less secure with every passing harvest. And in proportion as you remember the childhood which has led me so to write of you, in proportion as you remember gladness and innocence with its completed joy, in that proportion will you find at least a breaking burden in the weight of this world. Now you may say to me, little child, not now but later on, to what purpose is all this complaint, and why should you tell me these things? It is because in the portrait before me the holiness, the blessedness, and therefore the sacredness are apparent, that I am writing as I do. For you must know that there is a false way out and a seeming relief for the rack of human affairs, and that this way is taken by many. Since you are sacred, do not take it, but bear the burden. It is the character of whatever is sacred that it does not take that way, but like a true victim remains to the end, ready to complete the sacrifice. The way out is to forget that one is sacred, and this men and women do in many ways, the most of them by way of treason. They betray. They break at first uneasily, later easily, and at last unconsciously, the word which each of us has passed before. He was born in paradise. All men and all women are conscious of that word, for though their lips cannot frame it here, and though the terms of the pledge are forgotten, the memory of its obligation fills the mind. But there comes a day, and that soon in the lives of many, when to break it once is to be much refreshed and to seem to drop the burden. and in the second and the third time it is done, and the fourth it is done more easily, until at last there is no more need for a man or a woman to break that pledged word again and once again. It is broken for good and for all. This is one most common way in which the sacred quality is lost, the way of treason. Round about such as choose this kind of relief grows a habit and an air of treason. They betray all things at last, and even common friendship is at last no longer theirs. The end of this false issue is despair. Another way is to take refuge from ourselves in pleasures, and this is easily done, not by the worse, but by the better sort. For there are some few, who would never betray nor break their ancient word, but who, seeing no meaning in a sacrifice nor in a burden, escape from it through pleasure as through a drug. And this pleasure they find in all manner of things, and always that spirit near them which would destroy their sacred mark, persuades them that they are right, and that in such pursuits the sacrifice is evaded. So some will steep themselves in rhyme, some in landscapes, some in pictures, some in the watching of the complexity and change of things, some in music, some in action, some in mere ease. It seems as though the men and women who would thus forget their sacredness are better loved and better warned than those who take the other path, for they never forget certain gracious things which should be proper to the mind, nor do they lose their friends. But that they have taken a wrong path you may easily perceive from this sign, that these pleasures, like any other drug, do not feed or satisfy, but must be increased with every dose. And even so soon pall and are continued, not because they are pleasures any longer, but because, dull though they have become, without them there is active pain. Take neither the one path nor the other, but retain, I beseech you, when the time comes, that quality of sacredness of which I speak, for there is no alternative. Some trouble fell upon our race, then all of us must take upon ourselves the business and the burden. If you will attempt any way out at all, it will but lead you to some worse thing. We have not all choices before us, but only one of very few, and each of those few choices is mortal, and all but one is evil. You should remember this also, dear little child, that at the beginning, only at the very beginning of life, even your reason that God gave may lead you wrong. For with those memories strong upon you of perfect will, of clear intelligence, and of harmonious beauty all about, you will believe the world in which you stand to be the world from which you have come, and to which you are also destined. You have but to treat this world but for a very little while, as though it were the thing you think it is, to find it is not so. Do you know that which smells most strongly in this life of immortality, and which a poet has called the ultimate outpost of eternity, is insecure and perishes? I mean the passionate affection of early youth. If that does not remain, what then do you think can remain? I tell you that nothing which you take to be permanent round about you when you are very young is more than the symbol or the clothes of permanence. Another poet has written, speaking of the chalk hills, "Only a little while remain the downs in their solemnity." Nor is this saying forced. Men and women cannot attach themselves even to the hills where they first played. Some men, wise but unillumined, and not conscious of that light which I here physically see shining all round and through you in the picture which is before my eyes as I write, have said that to die young and to end the business early was a great blessing. We do not know, but we do know that to die long after, and to have gone through the business, must be blessed, since blessedness and holiness and sacredness are bound together in one. But of these three, be certain that sacredness is your chief business. Blessedness after your first childhood you will never know, and holiness you may only see as men see distant mountains lifted beyond a plain. It cannot be your habitation. Sacredness, which is the mark of that purpose, whose heir is blessedness, whose end is holiness, will be upon you until you die. Maintain it, and let it be your chief concern, for though you neglect it, it will remain and avenge itself. All this I have seen in your picture as you go across the grass, and it was an accident of the camera that it did. If anyone shall say these things, do not attach to the portrait of a child. Let him ask himself whether they do not attach to the portrait that might be drawn. Did human skill suffice of the life of a woman or a man which springs from the demeanour of childhood? Or let him ask himself whether, if a face in old age and that same face in childhood were equally, and as by a revelation, set down each in its full truth, and the growth of the one into the other were interpreted by a profound intelligence, what I have said would not be true of all that little passage of ours through the daylight. The end of chapter 26.